Recording. Righty. So, hey, everybody, welcome back to the Blended Garden. And thanks so much for being a part of this community. This is my final reading for now. And I'm so excited because I'm here with my good friend, Rich. Now, Rich, we communicate through Instagram and it's like Rangaro Rich. So what's your full name?
My name is Rich Jenkins.
Jenkins, that's right. Rich Jenkins.
Yep.
I love that last name. Jenkins. Sounds so Southern. Miss Jenkins.
It does. You wouldn't be the first, you won't be the last.
So I'm excited that Rich and I are finally here. We had a few faux pas. We're both educators, so Fridays are not ideal to do anything on Zoom, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna get started. And first of all, before we read, how you been, Rich?
Good. I mean, I think I can say okay, just like many of us. I'm better than a lot, and worse than some. But I think that it's been a couple of years. It's been a couple of tough years.
And it's been a long time since I've seen you in the flesh.
Oof, man.
We've worked at two schools together, right? And it's been a long time. And you kind of look, we look good.
I think Zoom definitely I can cut out all the other stuff. I just look like shoulders and hair here. Like it's not so bad. It's when I get out in the field that things start going downhill.
Yeah, we're doing okay. Kyle set me up before he went. I sent him to the supermarket. Like, I got to do a Zoom. Go to the supermarket.
If you're like, that's what kids are for. That's why.
That's right. And he's trying to give me all these extra technical stuff. I'm like, just tell me what to do. Just leave it alone. Yeah, but he set me all up, and we're here, and we look good. He changed my filter a little.
Beautiful.
All righty. So we worked at a couple of schools together. You've been an educator for, I know Mason is 20. So you've been an educator for almost 20 years.
That's alarming when you say Mason is 20. I started at the school. I started as a substitute teacher. I did the math the other day. It was 15 years ago this March. So but I was a substitute teacher for 2-3 months, and then was offered a job at that school, and I taught there for a couple of years. Then I moved on to another school. I've taught pre-K all the way up through in the classroom up through 3rd and 4th grade, but I've worked with everybody all the way up through high school. I've been an advisor. I've run after-school programs. I've been a coach, and currently working in education technology, specifically in grades K through 3.
That's amazing. You've got a resume like the Whopper. Have it your way.
I've been working on it. Lately. We can talk about that later too.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, this is awesome because I really want to pick your brain a little because, I work with the little babies and I can only do so much with this book. So I'm curious as to how you would share this, if you even feel like it could be useful to older children. So we're gonna start with Rich reading the book. Oh, I have to say this. So Rich and I have been going back and forth on Instagram, leaving those voice messages. And when I first heard your voice, I was like, oh my gosh, Rich, you need to do a podcast. Your voice was like velvet on the Instagram.
I do agree. I don't know if it tracks here, but yeah, I do appreciate that. That's all just whiskey and cigarettes. That's
crazy. That's right.
That's a misspent youth, and now I'm paying for it.
I love that you said that because a lot of people think that as educators we're Barney, especially when you work with the little ones. And I always tell people I am not Barney.
Oh, Jahidah. I mean, I know where all the secrets are. You see it, especially, it's such a stressful job. There's so much there. You're putting your heart out there with kids, and you're vulnerable all day because you have to be a good educator.
Constant energy,
constant there. You're open, you're up, and just being able to just like turn that internal volume down with it for a second with just like a this or a that, whatever your vice is. It can be just the most. You said the other is woosah. Wusa.
Wusa.
And if you can find it, spiritually, then find it spiritually. But for some of us,
Wherever you can find it,
for some of
get
us,
that wusa.
it's brown liquor in a dark room. That's
That's
just
right.
like
I always tell people, happy wife, happy life, happy classroom, happy teacher. Now, obviously, your woosah stays at home, but
Mhm.
when you get home, you have to just unwrap all of it.
Hell yeah.
So, but it's awesome. I'm just happy to know that I've worked with someone like you. I think you're amazing. I'm really honored that you are my last reading. How great is that? You reached out to me and said,
You're
I
on
would
it.
love to do this. And I'm a little shy about asking people.
Of
So I
course.
was so happy when I got your email. So,
Anytime, any place, Jahidah, you got me.
all right, everyone. So this is Richard Jenkins reading The Blended Garden.
The Blended Garden, written by Jahidah Diaab and illustrated by Anna O'Donnell. Once upon a time, in a colorful garden, a dandelion sat alone and disheartened. The dandelion saw many flowers from afar, all arranged by their colors. It was quite bizarre. It longed to be part of the colorful array of tall stems in the wind where they bend and sway. The old lady gardener, with her hat tilted low, arranging her flowers with a wish that they would grow. Now, this old lady gardener was quite confusing. She thought sorting flowers was quite amusing, placing this flower here and that flower there to match and examine, measure, and compare. As each flower lived in its own special space, apart with their friends, it was a very sad place. With arms reaching outward, they tried to connect, but sadly, divided, they could not intersect. The flowers were angry, and they began to stand tall. They said to the gardener, "This makes no sense at all. We are all so different, our colors unique. Blend us together, and you'll see a great treat. Mixing our colors, red, yellow, and blue, our petals like flags for all to view. A rainbow of ribbons blowing in the wind. The flowers protested, we want to be friends, not separate and sorted by a particular kind. Growing together is how we're designed." The old lady sat in her flower yard. She said to her flowers, "I've been working so hard. Sorting my flowers is tiresome indeed. And could this dandelion be more than a weed?" So tired she was that she took a long nap, and as she slept, zip, zoom, zap, the dandelion slept, then slowly transformed, taking flight in the night. Above the gardener it soared. All was quiet just beneath the full moon, unaware of the magic that would begin very soon. The old lady gardener awoke from a dream of a blended garden filled with dandelion seeds. As dawn approached, she began stretching and yawning, her arms reaching up to the glory of morning. As she lied in her wheelbarrow, feeling rested and free, envisioning her flowers as a field of we. This blended garden that I saw in my dream was inspiring, extraordinary, and satisfying to see. The old lady gardener with her flowers agreed, there is magic within this dandelion seed. I will no longer sort my dear flower friends. And she blew the dandelion seeds into the wind. Blow this way and that way and land where you may. You are part of my garden, and here you will stay.
Thank you, Rich. That was
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you. Wow.
All righty. So, what are
I
your,
mean,
yeah, I'll let you tell.
wow. I think right off the bat, I think if we're talking about this in terms of, because I hold this actually. I have a lot of pride about this. That I've worked with very young children, and I not only work with very young children, worked with very young children in the kind of constructivist environments that I think you and I know to be just. I mean, it's absolutely critical. I dream about those classrooms. When I think
Mm,
back to the early days of you and I working together, I really just the intentional design and the warm, safe, joyful, exuberantly just present places
mm,
with not a small amount of children. Lots of kids, sometimes 23, 25, 30 kids at a time, but with a just a, all this concept of the garden
mm.
resonates with me. This
Oh,
concept of how we are there to sort of nurture and guide and organize and interpret and
mm,
do all of these things as teachers, but I see this as a message to children
mhm,
that their differences and their unique elements will not be pigeonholed or placed into
mm,
some box. But I also see this as sort of a cautionary tale to educators, especially
mm,
in those early years, because I think it's very easy to think that you've got the red group, the green group, the blue group, the yellow
mm.
group, and those are the kids that red group's going to be the ones that are that you probably are going to trust a little bit more with these things, or
Mhm,
and I know with the UPK stuff, we're bringing a lot more assessment and kind of like rote literacy and rote mathematics and numeracy into it, which is great. There's a
right,
as there's a lot of baby in that bathwater. Like I think that just to say that that's awful things, we just throw it all out. I think
right.
we run the risk of losing a lot of it. And by the message that I'm hearing here, and in my as I was reading it, kind of in preparation of this, is both you are a part of our garden to your students, you are a part of our garden, you are loved, you are appreciated as an individual, and I promise you that wherever you are, you're still a part of our garden. You're still
Mhm,
here. And so it's this kind of communal mindset that is so critical in those early years, as well as this notion to teachers of just saying, it may be more important than all of the things that we do to just sort of let nature take its course with these
mm,
things. Let the wind take these kids, be there for safety, be there for consistency, be there for all the things that we know we need to do as educators, because we're
right,
not, this isn't daycare, this is
right,
school, this is
right,
we're teaching children. And so sort of kind of both sides of that thing I
right.
hear so clearly, Jada. It's beautifully,
Oh,
beautifully written.
thank you so much. And you know what, Rich? I never really thought about the whole how you said that. I wish I could like what do you call it? Dictate it, notate it. Um, that was really well said. I never really wrapped my head around the gardener being an educator.
That's so funny. That's and Jahida, that's amazing. I love that. We can turn the Zoom off now. That's like Jahida, isn't that beautiful? I mean, you wrote
Yeah,
this. This is you. This is you. This is yours. I mean, and I don't know if it's because like she's old lady. You're not an old lady, but like I'll be like,
I'm
I don't
getting
know.
there.
Like, is that Jahida? Like, what am I reading here? Like, what's this?
Right.
But I the entire time as I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
I mean, listen, the old lady is a gardener, but I just the cultivating, the tilling, there is
Yeah.
something so it resonates with me so much. Not to mention the fact that one of the first early beautiful, joyful things that you can do with a young person, whether they are in your classroom or in your home, is to grow things,
Hmm.
grow something. They
Yeah.
get so fucking into it. Just the
Yeah.
idea, even if the thing that they're growing is like apple juice trees and they're just like they're just making mud. Like that alone, the play that is inside of that, but the act of like, we're going to do this thing, we're going to care for it, we're going to be very calm and very intentional about how we lay this out. We know that there are certain things that our flowers need. They need water, they need sunlight, they need love. We're going to sing with
Mhm.
them. I just think so.
That's awesome. And they're
I
all kind of
immediately
doing it together. It's not you sit over there and do that project and you sit over there. But it's just so wow. I don't know. I'm bugging out a little in my head because I homeschool and I've been homeschooling for a while and I was introduced to homeschool by default because I had Kyle he was in a ICT class and um, I ran into some problems with how things work. There were teachers there that were loving and warm and had that mindset of this is a garden. And now that I'm thinking about it, there were some educators that were like the gardener. sorting and measuring and wilting the flowers that were inside my child. So I pulled them out
Yeah.
and handled that. And you know, yeah, this, like, I think educators can really learn from this, because the thing is, we've been really lucky. I won't say blessed. I say lucky, but I feel like we've been lucky to be able to work in an environment that allows us to, well, first of all, that teaches us, that requires us to be kind.
Yeah.
There are things that you just cannot do in the realm that we work in, and things you cannot say, and you cannot, sarcasm is a big thing, you know. And it's not healthy for any child, but
Right.
there are a lot of places where children go and there is sarcasm, and there is devaluing and degrading, um, let alone other things,
Yeah.
so, that's just really, really interesting. That as educators, yeah, no matter where you teach, there should be a place where you are like the gardener after her transformation,
Yeah. Right.
where she saw, and it took the dandelion to teach her that lesson,
Right.
you
And
know?
I mean, listen, this is all um I love the kind of like serendipity of the way that life works right now. I find myself now in my career sort of gathering, which when you're starting to think, maybe, I don't know, maybe I want to look for a new job, maybe a new position, maybe a new city, maybe a new something, like all that.
Just a new anything, you don't know
Yeah,
what it
right.
is yet.
And like, scraping together all those old things. And the other day
Yeah.
I was very, very activated. I got just kind of like just got hit. And me, once upon a time I was a writer and a poet. And so I do want
Mhm.
to talk about that, because I love the
Yeah.
meter of this, and the rhyming scheme, and the flow of it. But so I was writing down, all of these, all of my thoughts. You have to get together your philosophy of education, which
Right.
I really appreciate as an adult, and some, like, after going through grad school and working with older students. It's like, man, that is a really hard essay prompt.
Yeah.
Philosophy of education. You might as well ask me philosophy of anything. Like, that's like philosophy is a
Right.
very difficult concept for a lot of minds.
Right.
And I'm thinking, all right, this is right off the bat, they're trying to weed out like certain, like they're, and again, there's organization in that, and like we can talk for ages about that. But one of the things that I said, Jahidah, was that in those, or I talked about our time together, talked about our old school together, and I kind of expressly say, I don't say the school's name, but I expressly said that those early days were ones of like controlled chaos, where I stumbled more than I strode,
Right.
and I learned more than I taught.
Yeah.
And I think that that is something that lifelong teachers need to really kind of keep in mind,
Mhm.
whether it's by allowing their dandelions to be dandelions and not
Mhm.
qualifying them as weed or flower or this or that, or really just taking a intentionally critical look at what it is that they're saying and doing.
Mhm.
What books are we reading? What
Mhm.
songs are we singing?
Mhm.
What words are we using? Am I being sarcastic? Am I like I you were one of the first people to like show me that, like, I don't I it's those first years, that was it for me. It's like, I'm 6 feet tall, 6 feet tall, 220 pounds. I'm a monster to a 3-year-old, like monstrously large
You're
to a
giant.
3-year-old. And really, like you and Lynette and Jen and Jane, like all of you being like down, down, like get down. And
Down on the
now,
ground.
and I knew that with my nephews and nieces. I knew that, like, that's where you play with kids, but I didn't realize that it was like the kind of love and expectation that I'm bringing to like my fit. Like, that's
Right.
such a huge part of this early childhood world that you live in, and
Right.
that I used to be a part of. And I really think that as kids get older, teachers either never learned that or they've forgotten.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm still
Right.
gigantic.
And I
to a
think they
third
think they
grader,
don't need it.
to a sixth grader. I'm still fucking huge. I'm
Yeah.
the size of a house to these kids.
Yeah.
And so I'm not necessarily going to scrunch down and have a conversation with a sixth grader like that, but I am going to be very mindful of my tone. I am going
Yeah.
to be very mindful of the approach that I have because I work with all girls. I am going to be very mindful of, and again, like there's a whole gender conversation that we can get into
Right.
about very, very uncomfortable on that level, but also just trying to be very conscious and conscientious of the
Right.
environment that I'm in.
But when you think about it, and not to cut you off,
Please.
kindness seeps through gender,
Mhm,
seeps through color, seeps
mhm.
through development, delays or whatever the dandelion in that setting is. Kindness seeps through age. You can be a sixth grader, tough as nails, but
Yep.
if you can look into that sixth grader's eyes and they know that they are included and they
Yep.
are welcome and they are part of this community just by being who they are,
I
that's
see.
it, you know then you've done 90% of your job.
And it's wildly empowering to them and wildly empowering to a teacher. Is there anything better than knowing that you've reached your students? Is
Yeah.
there any better feeling than knowing that the words you said landed?
Right.
And I think that a lot of teachers think that that's, I don't know. I
Well,
feel
you
like
know
a
what I
lot of,
think it
yeah,
is? I
please.
think that the goal, when you, depending on what kind of setting you work in, you have responsibilities and accountabilities.
Mhm.
And sometimes that can override, the person, the child. You're
Yep.
thinking, did they do their homework? They got a C the last time. I got to get them up to a B or an A. It's the accountability that you could be focusing on and not the child. And so it's tricky
Yep.
because it's a system at the end of the day, just like even a garden is a system,
Mhm.
unless, like you said, you just kind of let it grow how it's going to grow. And that's how I wrote the book. I
Yeah.
wrote the book by sitting in my own garden and watching how everything was just doing its own thing. Morning glories were wrapping around sunflowers. Like I wasn't taming anything.
Right.
And that's when I realized, wow, if we could all somehow get to this place where we allow everything to just be the way it is and then work around that. Like with my morning glories, people hate morning glories because they
Mhm.
take over and then
Mhm.
they reseed and they're everywhere. So I decided I'm not going to get rid of them because they're beautiful. They open up in the morning. On cloudy days, they're open all day. They close up at night. That's magic. You
Yeah.
don't kill magic. So
Yeah.
what I did was I got some rope, tied
Mhm.
it up, tied a bunch of rope up to the gate. And I did this with 5-year-olds when I worked at another facility. And those morning glories just followed the line and it
Yep.
was beautiful. And so instead of ripping it out, work around it. This is the nature of this plant and this flower. This is the nature of this child. Work around it.
You
Work
also
around
you also installed some very intentional systems. You introduce a very intentional system to their environment in the same way that you have a schedule on the wall that the kids are very much familiar with. It's pictorial for the younger kids. I just went through. I just sat through a parent breakfast. Breakfast. Nobody has breakfast with parents anymore. It's all over Zoom.
it.
But I just sat through one of these where we were talking about mathematics, but it was for our K and first grade parents. And so, and I know you know this. I'm starting. This is new for me. This is a new experience for me. Is that now I'm starting to become the same age and now older than some
Mm.
of our parents. It used to be the opposite. It used to be the parents were all older than me, and it was the same as like when I was a kid. When I would say I was a kid, like I don't know, I was like 25 or 26 years old, and I started to realize that all professional sports players were younger than me. When as opposed to like my entire life, I've been like, oh my gosh, like these guys are like these are giants. They're like, it's like, oh
Right.
no, they're still giants. They're just 19. And that's just the way
Exactly.
that it goes. That's just life. That's it. So we got these young parents, and I think and they're hearing these critical things that I think that I know they really need to hear, whether they listen to it or not. But what I see in these moments is that what our our the head of social and emotional development and our kind of lower school therapist in the K to 3 program mentioned is just like your children are going to really start to embrace this concept of a schedule and these structures that are put into place. And when those structures disappear, it can be very, very jarring to them.
Mhm.
And so I just think that
Mm.
if we want to run with this marathon about a successful classroom being like a garden,
Mhm.
where there are structures in place, but only to ensure the safety and joy and kind of development of
Right.
the
Not
flowers that
control,
are
not
growing there,
control.
not control. Exactly. Maybe not control, in to encourage, to
Encourage.
enrich,
Right.
to kind of
And embrace the control chaos.
exactly. It's just control chaos. I mean, chaos is like, I'll never forget it. Back, I was in a kindergarten classroom, and we had like one of those days,
Oh,
like just one of those days. And so it was a project-based school. We're building a model version of the neighborhood, and we got we we get we tried it with the temper paint, but the temper paint doesn't work. So we had to order a bunch of like oil-based paint. We knew that it was going to get stained, and so the kids were all wearing their, like, we had parents send the kids to school with like,
Max.
yeah, it's just like, they're like, well, so they're all wearing big t-shirts. That's how we did it. We're like, send them to
The
school with an old
messy
t-shirt.
shirt.
Exactly, give us a messy shirt, right? These are kindergartners, and and one of them had like taken his shoes off. He's like, can I take my shoes off? And of course I'm like, yeah, of course, sure. I don't give a damn. Sure, of course, take your shoes off. You want to paint barefoot? Paint barefoot.
Okay. Oh my
And
gosh.
what he had immediately done was just like put his barefoot in it, and then like walked around the classroom. So Jahidah, no joke, there's like red oil paint footprints all over the classroom. Like, kids are like screaming, like rolling around on the floors, like painting this thing, and then like this kid's over there, and like this, and like I stood up, like I like straightened myself up. I kind of like breathe this, like I just exhale, and I look across the room, and my co-teacher is doing the exact same thing.
Like,
And we're
what do
both
we do?
like, and I just go, this is the best day I've ever had in my life.
Oh.
And she's like, I was just thinking the same thing. This is incredible. And then we had to be like, everybody, let's take a break. All right, everybody chill for a second. We have gone way off track right now.
Reeling it on back
Bring
in.
it back in. Bring it back in. Like Joseph, put your socks back on. We will watch. Joseph, come with me. We got to go to the bathroom. We got to go wash your feet. I'm going to hold your feet in the sink so we can get that paint off, because we got to put your socks back on, dude. We got to wipe this classroom down. We're going to have a story at the end. It's just like,
I'm sure it was their best day too.
oh my God. I mean, like, I see those kids. They're not kids anymore. They're in college.
I'm sure.
They're in college now.
I
So
know.
I don't know what the hell to do.
I know. I've got kids that are like 30 that would walk by me like, wow.
So I see them, and they will say things like, do you remember this thing that we did? I still remember that song you used to sing to us. Do you remember that time that you talked to me about this? And
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
yeah. Do you? You
Right.
were 5. How do you remember that?
You know how they remembered?
Mm.
Because they were included in
Right.
a community.
Right.
The only things I really remember with my heart were moments where I felt connected to the people and the experience that was happening in that moment. Like, I could tell you what was on the wall. I could tell you the sounds I heard, the smells I heard. And they were connected, and you connected them, and you included them. And it's going to be a lifelong memory.
It's just so special. And
That's
this,
awesome.
and so if you're going to take this concept into older grades,
Yeah,
I
how would
think-
that look?
I mean, listen. So like I said, I mean, I've worked up through middle school. I've coached in high school. I've been an advisor. I've done all sorts of after school programs. So I really work with all grades. And I will say that across the board, everybody likes creating a story. Everybody likes creating and illustrating a story, as long as they have the freedom to create and illustrate the story that they want to tell. And so I think that there's something really beneficial about introducing some structures to it, in terms of kind of encouraging something. So teaching them about about rhythm and measure, teaching them about different styles of poetry, rhyme schemes and things like that, encouraging them to kind of play along those lines. There's so much out there that is beautiful content to that, and it doesn't mean that we just have to like delve into like Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is just an example of a white guy who did this very popularly. It's been there forever. There's
Right.
music, there's song, there's poetry, there's all of this. So
Mm-hmm.
leaning really hard into kind of texts that we can draw inspiration from, and work that we can draw inspiration from, and then just saying, all you're going to be doing right now is you're going to be telling your story, but I'm going to tell you these are the things that you're going to have to tell you. These are the things that have to be included in your story. I want to
Right.
see a little bit of line. I want to see a little bit of rhyme, and then this beautiful thing that you've done with I think that there's something, if we think about different modalities of learning and the different things that kids really love to do, I think there's something really interesting about how like you reached out to an artist that you knew, and you said,
Yes,
I
Anna
can you,
O'Donnell. She's
can you
amazing.
do this thing for me? And I think that there can and should be space for things like that to happen at school. I know that my friend Jahidah is a really, really beautiful writer. And Jahidah knows that I really know how to draw. So
Mm-hmm.
there should be a space where Jahidah can say to me, okay, I wrote this. Can you draw it for me?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this whole concept of just communication and collaboration where I'm going to say, okay, you want me to draw this. So I'm feeling like I want to draw that. And you're the author. So you can say, well, that's not exactly what I was thinking, but you go like, there's space in there for social and emotional. And then for like the concrete developmental things that we're looking for.
Right.
There's literacy, there's deep arts integration. You can create integrated curriculum like this effectively across
Right.
any piece there. So that's the one. That's
Yeah.
just kind of like across the board. You can do
Right.
this any modality, any lesson, any area of school. You want to do it about math and the work you're doing in math, do it about math. Let kids be creative. They are
Mm-hmm.
creative in general. People are creative by nature.
Right.
It's just that a lot of times people feel very my philosophy or my theory is that I think that people tend to feel very much locked in by creativity, where it's like,
Right.
I don't really like to write. I kind of just like to draw. I don't really like
Mm-hmm.
to draw. I kind of just like to dance. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really like to dance. I just
Right.
kind of like to write.
Right.
And not allowing for people to find the way that
To
they like to
flow it, like how
express
everything in that garden just flows together.
themselves. And if
And
you
I love that what do they call that? Is that like cooperative learning or something where the older children, I guess, they come together and they create projects where they're
there's
all, we've got about 6 minutes, 7 minutes
yeah,
left.
and
But
brevity's not my thing, so I'm watching the clock. But so I mean, to me that's just the guts of constructivist project
yeah,
based.
yeah,
That's what it is. And
that's pretty
I
awesome.
think that a lot of times that gets a ton of play in early childhood and elementary because of Reggio Emilia and Montessori. And then it tends to fall off
Right.
because there are certain skills and there are certain expectations that teachers that schools are really looking for and that we want kids to develop. And pedagogues, like forward thinking educators, are all saying effectively the same thing. Kids have to
Yeah.
find their own place. If we're talking about math, kids have to find themselves in that math. They have to become joyful around the concept of just coming up with an idea,
Right.
explaining their thinking, not explaining why they're right or explaining why they're wrong, just explaining why they got there.
Right.
And
And everything you're saying, it revolves around the whole what is it? DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
sometimes we focus a lot, or we hear that and we think color right away.
Damn right.
But it's part of, if you're in a school, it starts with the learning place,
Yeah.
because I don't really care what color I am if I can't understand the math and I feel excluded because Susie Q keeps getting hundreds and I keep getting 60s. And
Yep.
now I feel further and further from the community of learners. Doesn't matter what color you are at that point. What matters is there's the cooperative learning. Maybe Susie can come on in and help this and put those pieces in place. But I want to spend the last couple of minutes just before we close out to discuss, like, even though this is a children's book, and I've had so many interviews since I wrote the book. And I've talked about infrastructure. I've talked about segregation. I've talked about so many things around this book. And it's not a, it's a children's book, but it has an adult message.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. I do.
So I really would love, like, I'm thinking now of like the older kids. Those are, like you said earlier, you can't get down on the floor with a 15-year-old the way you would with a 5-year-old. And sometimes those things fall off. The thought of including, the thought of kindness, the thought of just a kind gesture to the older ones. So I'm curious to see how a teenager would have a dialogue about this in a group. You know what I mean? Because there's so many,
I do.
with the whole cyberbullying and cliques, and as they get older, it can be very damaging.
I think that there is, I mean, yes, and I think that there can be a, sadly, there can be the way that DEI work can be done when it's not done correctly, or when it's not done. I don't know if there's a wrong way to do it. At least you're doing
Mhm,
it right. At
mhm.
least at least you're
You
trying.
have to have some experience in it to teach it.
And
That's my
also, I
thing.
mean, like, and
Like,
positionality is so important. Like, if I'm going to be teaching DEI to a diverse group of kids, I have to stand up and really be capable and vulnerable enough to be like, listen, I'm a white man. Like,
right,
that makes a big difference in the
right,
work. Now, that doesn't mean that the rules in what we're about to do are different,
right,
but it does mean that the rules out there are. And
right,
the rules out there are different because of that. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
right.
And so I think that, again, I would bring it back. I think that when it really comes down to it, I think what the one thing that you can teach children, the one thing that I think that we can teach and we should never stop teaching, is empathy. Is teaching that concept of empathy. And
There you
so
have it.
if I was to bring this into a DEI conversation or a conversation, I think that sometimes if you couch it like that, it becomes the tail wagging the dog. You've already told them what it is that you want them to do, and you're going to get 24 identical stories about how racism is bad and Black people and white people should be treated equally and all that. Those are easy truths to state, especially right now, especially considering how activated we've all become, rightfully so, in recent years.
Yeah.
What I think I would lean more towards is the concept of empathy, and say to older children, as older members of a community, how can you help to convey similar messages? What activates you? What
That's
are you
awesome.
passionate about? And then I bring in the author of this book, Jahidah Diaab, to say, this is why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because I
Yes,
am passionate about this, 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 and this.
I love
And
it.
it could be diversity, equity, inclusion, and I
I
love
love
to
it.
garden. And I love
Rich,
to garden. And
I
so
love it.
then it turns into a situation not where students are doing the thing because you tell them to do the thing or want to do the thing. You're
Right,
saying, all right, now come at it from an empathetic end.
right.
This is what Miss Diab did. What are you going to do?
I love
What
it.
story are you passionate about? How are you going to tell your story?
I
And
love it.
what jazzes you?
I
Are you,
love it.
you might have students that are like, yeah, racism is bad, but I really want to talk about sexism, or
Right,
sexism is racism
right.
is sexism is bad. I really
Because
want to talk about how there are
empathy
poor people.
covers
Like,
it all.
yep,
Oh, that's perfect. Rich, oh
that's
my
how I do
goodness.
it.
I
Yep.
wish we had like another hour and a half to talk. I am
Oh.
so grateful. Thank you so much, Rich.
Jahidah, it's a beautiful book, and thank you for sharing it with me and letting me be a part of this. I can't say it enough. It's a kind of universal something, and I think that everybody should read it. And man, your friend, beautiful artist as well. It's
Anna
just
O'Donnell. Thank you so
should
much,
be in
Rich. And
all of our classrooms.
yes, I'm gonna see you on Instagram, and hopefully we'll see each other and have that whiskey together.
Got it, Jahidah. I'm always here.
Because we're not Barney.
Not Barney. Never have been, never will be.
All right.
Love you,
Rich,
Jahidah. I'll see you
thanks
next
so
time.
much. And thanks everybody for tuning
Thank
in
you.
to the Blended Garden. I hope we can share this and get the word out about empathy. Yes.
Be good, Jahidah.
Thanks, Rich.
Talk soon. Bye.
Okay.